We are live. This is the market update. I am your host, Bill Noble. Oh my God, the stock market. What are we all going to do? All right, so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to try to unpack the real story with the tariffs. Kind of like an interesting negotiating tactic about what. That's what we'll cover. The stock market looks like it's going to zero. Worst case scenario, maybe 30%. NASDAQ's headed for the discount zone. S&P isn't. Crypto seems to hold okay, but we have to discuss the Friday, weekend, Monday pattern with equities when they panic, right? Because it does feel like they're panicking a little bit. And usually the stock market does not bottom on a Friday or a Monday. So there is room for people to freak out. Now, if you want to know what the optimal scenario is, and I continue to believe this, the optimal scenario is for everyone in all governments to shut up about tariffs. Like, it's been dropped, leave it, drop it, and then start talking about something else or move to negotiations behind the scenes and off Twitter. If they stay on Twitter about this, equities come unglued. That's what I think. Now, again, if they're smart, they will just shut up. Just shut up, right? And let the market trade and hope that the Fed injects money into the system, or Bessent starts injecting money into the system via Treasury QE to keep this from becoming a calamity. Matter of fact, I think that's the only reason why equities are not A, down more, and B, why crypto is holding. I think money is already going into the system because, this is a scenario. If they don't put money in the system, high-powered money in the system to try to put a floor underneath this thing, and they stay on Twitter all weekend, it's going to get wrecked. Equities are going to get wrecked, right? Because equities are in process of pricing in a recession, one, and two, the cost of hedging is getting so high, people may have to just sell. Like, we can't hedge, can't protect ourselves, options market protection insurance is too expensive, just going to liquidate. So, inject high-powered money or shut up or face the music. Meantime, crypto just sits, which is impressive, right? Very impressive. Nothing outperforms forever. So there's some hope in crypto that people will wake up and figure out that the Magnificent Seven is kind of done in terms of being something where you can get dramatic upside. All right. Now, if you want to drink some Kool-Aid, you want to drink some Kool-Aid. It has paid to buy every nuke in stock. So let's say the worst case, stocks go down like 30%, right? Not from here. I think the total decline in stocks is like 30%, kind of like cough, cold, and flu, right? Historically, it's paid to buy after they wipe it out 30%. We'll see, right? You had 100% bearish sentiment and equities going into this. It's going to probably be worse. They've already got rate cuts priced in, and I don't see why you wouldn't get rate cuts starting in May, especially if this continues, right? I mean, if this continues, then they're going to have to do something if they're not doing it already. What does this mean for crypto? I don't know. I think Bitcoin is basically okay. You can have highly volatile wicks, super speculative altcoins. Like if it's not useful yet, I'd be mildly concerned to very concerned. But it does appear that anything American made or anything that's already disastrously oversold, we have a lot of Solana FUD, Solana being unstaked today. I don't know. It's still very hard for me to get negative on Bitcoin specifically. It's also hard to get very negative on crypto, particularly if equities are going to be this like Friday, Monday puke before Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, starts putting money in. Are people hurt? Yes. Are people afraid? Yes. Are people disgusted? Yes. Okay. But that's not a reason to not carry on and not follow what's going on. Seriously. So we're going to break it all down for you. Let's welcome the warriors who are still here. SGSG, the original. Welcome. Yav, Zapatas, Manu, Valdotes, Metal. Welcome. Vanessa in the house. Warmon, Taz, Pinball. The weekend chop. Almost here. Okay, let's unpack. Got a lot to unpack. And I got some stuff from the Goldman chat room as well. Let me see if I got any breaking news from my boys. Okay. So we'll start with news. Okay, we'll start with breaking news. Actually, it's right here on my phone. Okay, so breaking. I'm straight up reading a tweet. Wall Street's pretty large continues of Orange Man supporting Republicans are doing soul searching these days as the Orange Man goes all in on trade. They can't believe he's blowing up the economy and markets and isn't even in office 3 months. They're right on this. The markets are reeling and the economy will suffer if this trade war persists. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Where they're wrong is that they haven't a clue on how Trump operates. He uses grand gestures to get attention and then cuts deals. So let's see if the deal maker in Trump emerges from all this where he uses the tariff as a negotiating point to cut better deals. If it doesn't end well, the economy and the country is in for a lot of hurt. Meanwhile, most of their anger is being directed at, Peter Navarro and Howard Lutnick, two men they can't believe are setting national economic policy. They can't believe that cooler heads like Scott Bessent, who's Treasury Secretary, aren't intervening to approach tariffs in a more methodical way. Again, there's nothing methodical about Trump, but the guy I know is a realist and he loves to broker deals, so stay tuned. Okay. So that is what Wall Street is saying this morning. Again, not a surprise that, they're saying they would expect more level-headed behavior from Bessent. Bessent's probably got his finger on the Treasury QE button. He's got to. Otherwise, why would he go along with this? That's just me. Okay. And I got more. I got a lot more. But that's at least some context. Okay, so the unemployment rate is higher. The number of jobs added. All right. So the jobs report was out 6 minutes ago. The U.S. payroll number, they added 228,000 jobs versus an expectation of 140. So just in case you're wondering how these economic numbers get traded, economists make an estimate, like say 140,000 jobs were added and the actual job number was 228. All right. So, this could, first of all, we don't even know if these numbers are accurate. They weren't accurate under Brandon. So we don't know if they're accurate. Second of all, this could be unemployment payrolls is a lagging indicator, meaning these numbers could have reflected the economic optimism for when the Orange Man first came in office. And then you may not see the real impact of this for like the May or June numbers if there is, in fact, a complete loss in business confidence and private sector layoffs. So right now, I think the way the market will look at this is that this prevents the market from fantasizing about an immediate Fed rate cut to stop the decline in equities, because I think that's what they were fantasizing about overnight. They're not going to be able to hold on to that fantasy. And even if the Fed did do an emergency rate cut right now, it would be an admission that there's serious trouble. The market would blip up and go straight down. It happened in 2007 in December. Seen it before. The emergency cut doesn't work unless it really is an emergency. And equities people being down 15% is not an emergency. Crypto people, it's like, hey, we wake up, we look at the market, we go brush our teeth, stuff moves 10, 15%, right? It's not a crisis for us. But are the Charles Schwab crowd, are they going to panic? That's the question. That was a question yesterday. That was a question today. The Fed's not doing an emergency rate cut. However, I'm sure they will dive into the belly of these numbers. Who knows? We may be able to get that by the time the stream is over. Okay, so I don't like this. Vance downplays one bad day for the market. That smells like Celsius. Everything is okay. Don't worry. We're all going to make it. Steady boys, whatever. Okay. That's always negative. I think, they should say, the market will see our way eventually, which they sort of are. Be careful of steady lads. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah. The best thing they can do is just shut up. Just shut up and let the market figure this out. Okay. So one good point, if these tariffs end up working, nobody will ever trust the experts again. Not Jerome Powell says short-term pain, long-term gain. And my answer to that is, bro, that is propaganda. Okay. JP Morgan said, and we'll go over it in a minute, is the biggest tax increase since 1968. And my first reaction after seeing these numbers is they're broke and they need money. Is it a negotiating tactic? Are we trying to make a deal? Okay, maybe. But that sounds like propaganda to me. The bottom line is they raised taxes. They did it on trade instead of people. And they did it because they don't have enough money. That's why crypto is holding, in my opinion. They're just broke. And they came out with this whole clever way of unpacking it, which again is why crypto is not falling apart at this time. Now, of course, there's a limit to that if you have a stock market panic. But I'm not buying into the propaganda. It is a negotiating tactic, but that, I don't know. It was so medieval that it feels like a cash grab. Feels like they need to get as much money on the books as possible. Okay, so one prediction I did get right is that you would eventually see sobbing people coming out of government offices, right? Federal layoffs hit 216,000 for March. Yeah, so they only have 784,000 to go. All the employment over the last year and a half has been public sector employment. And they've been at this for, I don't know, a couple of months, and that's all they can get done. And we'll go over this thing about Elon, which I think is a real point of intrigue. Okay. So Kramer is like, well, I'm disappointed, and his administration has screwed it up. Okay. Now, two things about this, just as a reminder. Every recession, going back to the history of every recession, including the Depression, including stock market crashes, including all this bunch of stuff, can be traced back to a government screw-up, right? In 87, Greenspan talked way too tough on interest rates and inflation, and the market got wrecked, right? In 1929, it was the mismanagement of the banking system. It was a lot of strange government policies about regulations about what the banks were allowed to do. In 2008, they were too busy. They were too busy letting Wall Street make money to look at what was happening in mortgage-backed securities, which everybody knew was a problem. Okay. So government, and when it comes to a recession, like in 1992, George Bush Sr. said, read my lips, there will be no new taxes. And when he got in office, he raised taxes. And then it was like a 2-year mini recession. So again, government policy, sovereigns, do they have your interests at heart? I think one of the reasons why crypto is not down is because A, crypto was already down. B, the dollar is in trouble. And C, sovereigns, even if you like the personalities, they inherently screw up when they mess with economics. Okay. Okay. So here we go. So on the note of staying off the tape and shutting up, President Trump tells investors, my policies will never change. Okay. Divorce risk, marry Bitcoin. Dude, people are going to figure this out. And they're going to be like, you know what? We're done with this. It's going to happen. The second equity stop going down, whenever that is, the second that happens, this thing's going to go, Bitcoin anyway, is going to go straight up as soon as they get done. All right. Now, back to economics. So, markets are now fully pricing in 25 basis point Fed cuts for every meeting for the rest of 2025. And you know what? They're not wrong, right? This continues. You're going to see it in the job numbers. You're going to see it in confidence numbers. You're going to see it everywhere, right? And the orange man just told you, I'm not flinching. You're right. And, okay, right? He's willing to take the pain. They do a lot better if that's all he said. If he just said that and shut up for the rest of the day, but I don't think he can control himself. The biggest risk is him on Twitter. If they would just shut up, it might be okay. Okay, now we also have to talk about DOGE, right? Because this impacts the dollar. This also impacts interest rates, which impacts crypto, right? So Goldman is launching a real-time DOGE tracker to monitor the economic impact in Washington, D.C. Again, you cannot lay off this many people without literally wiping out the area that these people live in. New Jersey, next to New York, never recovered from 2008. Essentially an insolvent state. New Jersey is a giant suburb for Wall Street in Lower Manhattan. Never recovered from 2008. I have no idea how DC and Virginia survive what may happen. Now, speaking of what may happen, so there's all this talk about Elon leaving. So, the Tesla thing is real. Like the Eagle King went to a mall on the West Coast and some guy was like, hey, want to test drive a Cybertruck? Right? The Eagle King later in the day sent me a video of of Cybertruck self-driving mode. And I thought it was one of the things he pulled off Twitter. And it was him. It was him because nobody wanted to test drive the Cybertruck. Nobody. So the Eagle King's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. I can't buy one, but I'll do it. No one wants to touch it. So just so we're clear about what Elon's job is, he's a special government employee. So that means he can actually serve under the purview of the government for 130 days. Every 365 days, he can actually work there for 130. Okay? So that's the fact. So the media, legacy media yesterday was like, Elon leaving in May. So it made it look like everybody was protesting Tesla dealerships and Elon was leaving because of that. That does not appear to be true. Okay. White House is saying that Elon will remain until DOGE is complete. I think Elon has said, Elon has echoed the sentiment calling talk of his departure fake news. Okay. So if Elon can't cut costs, then cost cutting is over. And if cost cutting is over, money will continue to flood into the system, which again could be why crypto will hold up. Because if money continues to flood into the system and Bessent puts money into the system and then Powell has to put money into the system, crypto will come back. Okay. And I think, the Musk thing is a win-win for crypto because, if he is able to continue somehow cutting as an advisor, that's what they should be focused on. They should go from tariffs back to DOGE quickly if they're smart. Okay. Okay. So here is your tariff apocalypse. So according to this, iPhones may go from 1,000 to 3,000, right? Tariffs may cut earnings for tech companies by 15%. Okay. Tech companies face the worst crisis in 25 years. Reciprocal tariffs aim to match this. Unlike 1980s, tariffs now hit technology, AI. Silicon Valley relies on Asian supply chains for chips and hardware since 1990. 40% of global trade gave U.S. cheap tech. Okay, you get the idea. So, I mean, what they've done is insane, and the market reflects that. Nobody expected it, not even me. I mean, that was just crazy. I mean, Miss Teen Crypto came out with a thumbnail, which I should have used. It just said, "I'm so mad." Like, you want to drive an iPhone from 1,000 to 3,000? You're gonna have panic buying in shopping malls over the weekend. It's like Best Buy. Computers and iPhones may become the new toilet paper. That's what you may see over the weekend when people let that sink in. When this starts sinking in, consumers may just lose their mind. All right. Worst stock market in 4 years, right? 2.8 trillion wiped out. Just, somebody posted this with a video of the orange man at a campaign rally going, "You're going to be so tired of winning. You're going to be like, Mr. President, stop it. I'm tired of winning." And he's going to be like, "No, we're going to keep winning." First, we got rugged. Then they got rugged. Seriously. Now, if you want to hear something positive, if you want some good news, I'll give you some good news. So, one of the things you'll notice is that the orange man's company, World Liberty, is investing heavily in DeFi, right? They're investing in mining. And it did not occur to me, it just didn't. If I could get these things right, I could live stream from my yacht. It did not occur to me that the reason that they're investing in crypto and DeFi is because Dad was going to come in and break the legacy system. You know how we're always saying "Ooh, we need an alternative. We need an alternative to Web 2. We need, we need a new banking system. We need new money." Yeah. It didn't occur to me that they're investing in that because they were going to wreck legacy. That did not occur to me. It did not. Okay, so Dalio's going to be out today. He's got his tweet about, how all this works. If you don't know where it is, I just reposted it, so you can check that out. My Twitter. More comedy. Bernie Sanders saying free trade without tariffs will destroy American manufacturing back in 2008. Okay, so, Bernie wanted tariffs. The American left wanted tariffs in 2008. And now, of course, Bernie is out there towing the left's talking point saying the tariffs will destroy America. Right? Okay, so there's been a long-established correlation between equities and Bitcoin, with relative liquidity flows, right, being the main driver. The monthly correlation is above 90%. Bitcoin generally more volatile of the two. Now, of course, this is correct. Not going to lie. Did some of this yesterday. Bitcoin and NASDAQ are correlated. Now, if there was ever a time in the history of mankind for there to be, as Michael Saylor said, a divorce or a decoupling, like my group has been calling for a decoupling for a while. That's it, right? Eventually, someone has to say, whatever's going on here in equities and legacy is bunk, and I need a different system. I don't know how long I've been talking about this. Now would be a good time. I mean, they finally went far enough. They finally went far enough, right? Why the crypto market is down today. Okay. Bitcoin is capital preservation tool, and it's going to 70K. All right. So everyone's negative crypto, and we all sit here and hold our breath and wait to see what equities say. Okay. And like I said, if they shut up, it'll be fine. If they don't shut up, then we're going to have to deal with volatility. I can read charts, but I mean, if you look at the extent of the fake out and how brutal this failed rally was in equities, particularly when you had 13 bottoms going on in S&P, oh my God. Okay, so President Trump's claim on market boom and the implications for crypto. Okay, there's going to be no market boom right now. The only way you get a market boom is if, these tariffs subtly get deals done behind the scenes. But the real thing that they do is they wipe everyone out in equities, allow inflation to come down, and Powell to lower rates. I've said this on this show for a year. Why does a steak cost $25? Other than Brandon's absurd ag regulations. Take that out for a second. Why is a ribeye steak $25 at the grocery store? Why? Because people with NVIDIA money can afford to come in and pay it. Prices only go up if people are willing to pay them. So you just rug everybody's steak budget and then see what happens. It's like eggs. Remember eggs? Oh, stop killing chickens. Boom. Eggs collapse. They're going to try to do the same thing with the price level in the overall economy. We're just going to pull and no more NVIDIA sugar for you. And to that extent, this makes sense. You want to kill inflation? You got to create some unemployment and take down the stock market. You take down the stock market and the Fed can cut rates. That's 120K Bitcoin. Now, the question is, what's the downside in the short term? Honestly, I don't know. We'll look at the charts. We'll try to figure it out. Okay. So Mag 7 lost 1 trillion. And just so you know, right? 2.8 trillion was wiped out from the stock market in one day. Crypto as an industry is worth 2.8 trillion. So they wiped out more yesterday than all of crypto is worth in one day. That's how big or inflated they are relative to what our eensy-weensy little market is doing. Okay, back at the Legacy Ranch, Fidelity offers 0-fee retirement for crypto. This is why Fidelity, Van Eck, they don't want people cashing out of stocks and leaving the company, cashing out the IRA or whatever. They want to be able to have their advisors say, let's go from Mag 7 to Bitcoin. That's what they want. It's probably how BlackRock set it up, right? They want to be able to access capital markets without banks through tokenized assets, and they want 401ks, pension funds, and everybody to be able to allocate from Mag 7 to Bitcoin through their investment products. Sounded crazy at the time, but it's true. Okay. So we have President Trump's response in the auto sector, right? Interesting that the Canadians want to slap us with, I don't know. They want to slap us with retaliatory tariffs. Get off the tape. Okay. Now, this is more sort of very interesting information that's worth just having. Wall Street execs, okay, have been told that the new tariff regime will be to cut reciprocal trade deals. They have cautioned the White House about the impact. Okay, that said, if the trade deals can be reached and both sides begin lowering not just tariffs, but trade barriers, the effect will be a long-term positive. They told the White House that getting there will be extremely messy and it will represent the biggest political challenge of his presidency, making DOGE contemps look like a walk in the park. So the Orange Man, he's rolling the dice on this big, right? Just like he's always done in real estate, everything. Guy just goes in and pushes out all the chips and said, all in, call in poker. Okay. At the same time, my sources say that the trade dealings with China will heavily involve 2 interesting and additional variables: TikTok and BlackRock. Right? What a shock. BlackRock's interest. The world is blowing up for something that has to do with BlackRock. That's down at the Panama Canal. Trump needs the Chinese leaders to buy in on something relating to TikTok and BlackRock, and then we'll walk back the tariffs. Okay. One problem the White House has is key. The tariffs could crush his base. Okay. Farmers and the sale of U.S. natural gas. Okay. We are going to get short-term inflation and an economic slowdown. Wall Street execs are telling the White House that could appear in the second quarter numbers. Story developing. Okay, so the Orange Man's rolling the dice with all of our P&L. Crypto bros are probably done right now. I'm guessing crypto bros are like, hey, is there anyone else I can vote for? Because this is BS. You know what I'm saying? At this point, they either get rate cuts or they show up at the Bitcoin conference in May with the strategic reserve. That's what would make the difference at this time. Okay, we already did that. U.S. stock market. Okay, TA. All right. So now Wall Street has to rearrange itself. So everyone has to adjust their research to the price action. Okay. JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon and friends, global recession, 60% chance of a recession. A global downturn is also likely, but not certain. Okay. So the markets are pricing in a recession, and then all the analysts have to go, like Muppets, they have to go, okay, yeah, it's going to be a recession. I don't know if the private sector is going to freak out like in 2008 and just lose their mind and fire everybody. I don't know that. That doesn't seem to make sense, but you don't know at this point, which is why all the investment banks are like, well, you know what? If the market's going to get hysterical and I'm not hysterical, I look like I'm out of touch. So it has become impossible for legacy analysts to be positive, which is interesting. That creates a crash in the short term, but that keeps everybody negative for the rest of their life once it's over, which could benefit crypto. In other words, if this is what JP Morgan thinks, the legacy system is broken. And of course, don't forget, right? Like, the American left wanted this a long time ago. It helps put it in perspective, right? Like Obama wanted this in 2008. Okay. Explaining how he tariffed China to save American jobs. There is some reason for these things to happen. There is. Right? Our manufacturing base is overseas. Now, doing it this way through the art of the deal and the art of the big stick, okay. Interesting. All right. Okay, so on to live TA. The Eagle King, as always, with just amazing friggin' news. Okay, so stock market, let's just start with that, right? This is NASDAQ futures. The discount zone is, I don't know. It's like 2% below today's low. So they've taken the Magnificent Seven and they've marked it down. So NASDAQ's been marked down 20%. 20% marked down in NASDAQ, 20% marked down in Bitcoin, 20% marked down. Now, if they can shut their mouth, this might stabilize. If they don't shut their mouth, you're going to have a Friday, Monday event. And God only knows what happens to crypto over the weekend. I'm trying to be positive. Okay. Let's look at some DeMark work in stocks. If we can get some cooperation here from the computer. Okay. So this is the 4-hour chart of stocks, S&P, right? So that's the 500 biggest stocks in America. Basically, every American, every mutual fund, everybody is long S&P. So you had a 13 bottom right on the DeMark support point. You got this nice rally, figuring this was by the news after the orange man said what he was going to say. Huge gap down, and now everyone's losing their mind, right? I mean, I had every justification to be like, this looks okay. Wrong. Okay. NASDAQ, QQQ, 13 bottom, nice support point, hits the support point, bounces, gaps through it. Brutal. Everybody caught the wrong way. Everybody. Okay. So Bitcoin's not doing much. Not doing much at all. Right? You look at a 4-hour chart, I don't know. It's 81 to 87, right? If they take out 81, well, I guess then we have to figure that out. But sometimes Bitcoin in these like moments of sideways silence, I've said on the show before, sometimes that's not good, but we don't know. Like if they don't do a crash over the weekend, right? If there's no Monday crash, Bitcoin might recover sharply. I'm guessing, right? Like everyone's gonna be like, oh, it's Black Friday, it's ugly. Especially if the orange man just continues to push the issue, right? If he doesn't shut up, it can stabilize. If he's on the tape, that's your indicator for today. That's your pivot. That's it. If he doesn't shut up, it's going to go down. Stocks are going to freak out. But if they just leave it alone, then maybe people have puked out. Now, let's talk about fear. So originally I was like, well, this tariff thing is not a big deal because fear didn't make a new high. That's what I was saying before the announcement. And unfortunately, I had too much company. It's a sick feeling as an analyst. You ever wonder what it was like to be an analyst? It's a sick feeling when you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I had so much company on that. I was in the pool with everybody else. Like I was in the pool and I was happy. And then I looked around and I was like, oh, there's a lot of people in this pool. And then over my head, I could see the toaster coming in. I'm like, oh God. So fear broke out, right? And, this was the yen carry mess. So they can get a lot more upset than they are now. And in this case, this has to do with the cost of options protection or insurance. So, normally VIX spikes like this and then comes back down because, they buy every big dip in equities. The only thing, it hit the premium zone in VIX, right? So, now with that said, I have seen it in 2008 where VIX will stop going up, VIX will stop going parabolic, and the equity market will continue to go lower. So all I'm saying is I'm just trying to give you some color. If you see VIX sit still-ish with equities cascading lower, right, that means guys are giving up on hedging and they're just selling. They're selling. And I don't know. I mean, hedge funds were already giga short going into this. So these are the variables that we will watch Friday, Monday, right? I can't predict what's going to happen with stocks because I can't predict what the orange man's Twitter is going to do. Okay. If they're stupid over the weekend, like, the second biggest risk to the market other than the orange man on Twitter is what these characters like Lutnick and whatnot say on Sunday morning TV shows. Like if they come on Sunday morning talk shows, political talk shows, and say the wrong thing, this market Monday morning, the stock market. Okay. And we're all aware of stock market fear at this point. And the thing I want to say about crypto is that this is why we crypto. This is it. This is literally it. You have government policy error, blows up legacy, and you have to ask yourself, what kind of money do I want? How do I want to trade AI? You ain't trading AI with Microsoft. You ain't doing that anymore. Let's just pull that up. Just pull up some random stock market company, right? I don't think you're trading AI with this, bro. Because this is your good old-fashioned, and this is how equities top, right? Like a rounding distribution, right? Warren Buffett, hedge funds, just distributing to retail. You're not trading AI by buying Microsoft stock. Microsoft stock was not an AI trade to begin with, so you got to find a new one. There was a guy in one of my groups who was DCAing in Patreon. Not Patreon, sorry, excuse me. Was DCAing in Tau because he said Kraken was paying 10% staking yield on Tau, which is an AI coin, which, we can pull the chart up on that, right? He's like, yeah, man, it's like, with these prices where it is, I'll take a shot. This is with his attitude, right? Okay. So, Tau on the 4-hour chart, you got 13 bottom, all kinds of signals that would lead you to believe that this is probably over. Okay. That's the 4-hour chart. Like on a daily chart, we just wanted to look at AI altcoins. You got a 13 bottom, and then you're going to have a 9 bottom on top of that. So if equities don't get wrecked or there is one final puke, you can make some kind of case for crypto, right? Like Michael said, just divorce all this stuff, right? They didn't listen to me about the strategic reserve. They'll start listening if this goes low enough. The only way out of this hole is crypto for them. Like they've painted themselves into a corner, right? I mean, they've painted themselves into a corner. If you wreck the stock market, you have to pull the crypto vote back in. You have to. Okay. So total 3, this is total altcoin market cap, has not made a new low. Okay. I don't have the reversal signals that I would want on this oscillator matrix. This little X signal I like, but you don't have another one going with it. Okay. Total crypto market cap, same thing. You should have slowing downside momentum, kind of like you did here. You get one final wick and then, that was a 1-day pop. Hopefully we can get something more sustained. I think we would be naive to think that stocks can go down and that would have zero impact on crypto. But, if there is one more puke, that could be an opportunity. Okay. Now, dollar index. Okay. No reversal signal yet on dollar index. Discount zone near 100 and something. So that was the biggest down day. I can't remember the last time dollar index did anything like that. That's unbelievable. And I think that's what's holding up crypto. That's what's holding crypto up. Okay. And then really what I can do from here is just kind of give you color. Like we can look at how the bond market is because I believe going forward, the bond market now matters massively. Okay. So the bond market is breaking out. So I don't know, maybe they dove into the details of the payroll number, right? And I'm not the only person on the planet who can see this. So if you have long-term interest rates, like let's do it with interest rates itself. So if you don't understand what this is the thing that creates the 30-year mortgage. It basically is the 30-year mortgage, right? So the 30-year mortgage could go from 4%, 4.3 to 3.38. So when you have a head and shoulders top, you travel this distance from the point of the breakout. So you could actually have 30-year interest rates, at 3%. Now you're like, wow, that's great. That's awesome. But you got to remember, a lot of times the reason people buy bonds is because there's a problem in the private sector somewhere like equity. So if you have a Friday, Monday mess, you could have a huge flood into treasuries just because, senior citizens, retirees, you hear these statistics like, oh yeah, 50% of the American public has their money in stocks. And what about all these, how like boomers own everything. You heard this? Well, we've done it. Boomers own everything. All the wealth in the country is in the hands of boomers, and they're all uber long equities. Do you know how easy it is on Schwab to go on Schwab online and to go from a stock mutual fund to a bond mutual fund? Like it takes 10 seconds. 10 seconds. And of course, everyone's going to call their advisor. And what's their advisor going to say? Yeah, stick with the market. Everything's great. Even if they believe that, they can't say that at this point. What they're going to say is, all right, well, if you're nervous, let's just move money to bonds. That's what they'll do. Now, if they're smart, they say we move money to Bitcoin. But again, interest rates falling. So this is your mortgage rate. And this is your car loan, right? This is your car loan, 5-year notes, 5-year interest rates, right? Now, what's interesting about 5-year interest rates, which I didn't really notice, is that you have this wicked type of head and shoulders formation with a downward sloping neckline. Now, undoubtedly, you're sitting there going, Bill, what does this have to do with anything? I'm going to tell you. So when you have these formations, when you break out, if you don't come back and touch this neckline, the move you get is massive. It's like what I try to say about diamond formations or breaking out at the apex of a triangle. See, with this formation, it's an upward sloping neckline. That's what a head and shoulders pattern in a book looks like. But when you get this, where it's downward sloping, okay, that means you could have a rapid move. Now, again, you're waiting in suspense to know why we care about a rapid move in 5-year interest rates, because that's the market either pricing in a cut or Powell actually doing something. Or they put in enough money into the system where everyone just panics and goes, oh my God, I need the safety of government bonds, even though they're not safe. If people think the unsafe thing is safe, what must be going on in equities? So it's implied in the chart. And the thing about Bitcoin, right? The thing about Bitcoin is this is probably why Bitcoin is holding, right? Because you're going to have massively lower interest rates when this is over, one way or the other, right? I mean, interest rates have been too high for I don't know how long. I've been saying, I get on the stream every day. Interest rates are too high. Okay. So if this problem rectifies that, because we don't need to wait for the Fed. You do not need to wait for the Fed. I mean, yeah, you do in some ways, but in some ways, the bond market can do all this itself. The Fed does not control 5-year interest rates. The Fed guides interest rates, but things like the 5-year and the 30-year or the car loan and the mortgage bond, if you don't understand the mortgage rate, if you don't understand that, those rates can move on their own. They don't have to wait for the Fed. They don't. Like, if the bond market thinks that a 30-year mortgage should be at 6%, it can go to 6% instead of 7 or 8 or whatever the hell it is now. So if you're wondering why crypto is holding, this is why crypto is holding. Now, will crypto continue to hold? We'll check it out, right? So, the thing that's so funny about Solana is that money flow is going green. So there's all this negative news on the tape about all this being unstaked. And I guess the threat is that gets market sold. My opinion was that whoever had those staking positions is probably already hedged with some kind of perpetual short position or an option. That's a guess. It's like, why would you just sit there with all that risk with the way this has been trading? And I don't know why you would sell in the discount zone. I don't. I'm sorry. I just don't. Like ETH is the same thing. Like ETH is sit there. ETH trades like garbage. ETH could go below 1,700, I guess, make everyone panic. I don't know, man. I just can't get negative here. I mean, I just can't. I mean, I know it can go lower. We just did all this stuff about what's going on with the stock market, but I'm just like, even gold, right? Like gold is at its premium zone. And, the world's panicking, stock market's melting down, and this may all be priced in. It could be. The dollar has to go lower. It went lower versus precious metals. Okay, what's the next trade? Oil. Even oil is at its discount zone on a daily chart. I can't remember the last time I saw this. So this is like, oil in 2 days is down 14%, 16% in 2 days. That's a big move, right? That's a big move. So you're immediately going to have a decline in gas prices. I don't know if that's going to make the consumer any better unless the consumer just doesn't own stock, which a lot of MAGA people don't. They're just like, lower middle class, lower middle and low poor class people. That didn't come out right, but you get what I'm saying. Okay. So, I mean, I could talk about this for hours. At the end of the day, the orange man's got to get off the tape. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana appear to be at this point immune to the legacy nonsense. And as soon as the legacy nonsense stops and something actually breaks over there, crypto goes straight up because it's obvious we need a new system. We're going to need a new system when this is over. Now, what do you do about your P&L? Okay, well, if you're long stuff that doesn't work and you don't like it anymore, make a decision, right? If you did a bad trade, make a decision. Now, in my decision, just talk about this briefly, right? Antivirus came out with a cross-chain mixer, right? So an actual, as I understand it, I have to do more research. So I understand it. They're coming out with a cross-chain decentralized mixer for ETH and Solana. Tornado Cash is only ETH. And that mixer actually has a token burn attached to people using it. And AI McAfee is now, you can talk to it in the Telegram group. And this trades at 2 million. Like, I'm not selling this. I'm not. If anything, I'm going to buy more. Not selling this. Now, that's just an example. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to say, oh, yeah, this is where you should go. You go where you want to go. But I've outlined the risk in equities. Again, if they're on the tape, they're going to wreck the stock market. And if they wreck the stock market, there's risk in crypto over the weekend. When this is all said and done, we're going to need a new system. We're going to need a system. People are going to look at this and go, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm convinced of that. That's why crypto is holding now. People are just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And people in equities don't do crypto because they haven't gotten hurt yet. And now they're getting hurt. Like, my business partner says this all the time. She has to talk to her friends about crypto. It's like, oh, yeah, you got to do crypto. Come on in. You really got to get involved. He's like, no, I'm fine in NVIDIA. Oh, okay, so how's that working out? You're not fine in NVIDIA anymore, Toots. Not anymore. So people might take a look. We'll see you Monday.